the library board is called to order, and we will go to item number 2, public appearances or non-agenda items.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Then we will need a motion to approve the minutes, which is item number 3, the July 2022 minutes.
So moved.
I second.
Thank you. Discussion? If there's no discussion, we will vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report, number 4, Wendy.
All right, so we're going to take a look at the register and the overview at the same time. A couple of things I wanted to point out. May was a 3 pay period month, so all the personnel costs are a little bit higher than we're used to seeing. As long as that evens out by the end of the year, and of course it will, that's just fine. Another thing I wanted to point out was in account 240, so that is work done by others. There was a dry sprinkler test by Johnson Controls. That is a 5-year test, so not something we see every year. Kevin keeps track of when that happens, so that happened recently. So we shouldn't see that again for a while. And you'll see a payment there also to Hill Electric for the LED replacement. I think we may have one more bill coming from them, but I think it's going to be a fairly small one. We've had a really hard time getting them to invoice us. I think they're having a hard time keeping office staff on board, so we have to beg for our bills. But I think if we get another one, it's going to be pretty small. We had talked about using them also to work on patio lights, and I think Kevin has decided that it will be probably more efficient to do that himself. So maybe one more bill from Hill Electric, and I think we're done with that whole project, which is fantastic. That means the whole building has been converted to LEDs. We had some summer performers. That is normal for non-pandemic times. We haven't had them over the past couple of years, but we got back to something of a normal SRP this year. So that's good to see. And I think that's really it. Oh, and account 350, this is kind of a facilities thing. There's an OCC sensor listed there. That's an occupancy sensor. So we have those in most of the restrooms and a lot of offices. We had one in a restroom in youth that failed, so the lights would never turn on. So we had to replace that and the power pack that goes with it. So also something we don't see very often. Other than that, I think everything looks pretty run of the mill. Does anybody have questions? All right, then we can, I think, vote to approve these together.
So if there's no clarifications, I need a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
And we need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. On to unfinished business, number 5.
Nothing there.
New business, number 6, Wendy, 2023 Dane County reimbursement, and then we'll just start with that one.
Yes. So this is a letter that came from the Dane County Library Board regarding the reimbursement that we get for Dane County funding every year. This is typically something that is part of a formula that takes 3 years of usage data amongst all of the county libraries, and they calculate cross municipal, across township use. They decided in 2021 that 2020 just ruined everybody's numbers, and then there was no real point in trying to calculate anything. And so they've kept steady the reimbursements where they were, and they're going to do that again for 2023. Our current reimbursement is $83,300. So we'll get that again in 2023. The other thing that they mentioned in here, I'm really happy to see. So they have hired a consulting firm, Rethinking Libraries, to evaluate the formula that we use. I think it's kind of tricky for libraries because the hard data that we have is checkouts, but that doesn't really account for a lot of usage. And so we're constantly looking for better ways to count things, and it all gets very complicated amongst the whole county. So having another set of eyes on it, but also one that works with libraries outside of Wisconsin, I think will be a huge benefit. So I think they're going to look at what other library systems do around the country and see what makes sense that might fit here better than what we're doing right now. I'm just happy to do this. We've been using this same formula since I got here. And I just remember spending hours and hours like poring over it, not ever fully understanding all of the intricacies of it. So I would welcome a change. So we will end up paying, I think, around $1,000 as our share of the consultant fee, but it will be well worth it. So we should just, I think, vote to say that we've seen this. Does anybody have questions about this? I, for one, am kind of relieved each year when this comes out, because I feel like if they're going to take all of the numbers we've got for the last couple of years and calculate something, it's not going to turn out well for anyone. So yeah, I'm happy about this.
Wendy, do you want a motion to, it's not a motion to approve it.
Yeah,
but-
let's go ahead and approve it.
Okay, I'll need a motion to approve and second the 2022 Dane County reimbursement letter.
I'll move to approve it.
Thank you,
I'll
John.
move to approve it.
I'll second Toby.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
I was old from last one.
Okay, thank you, Renee. So motion carries. Wendy, we're going to go to 6B, the draft of the 2023 budget.
Yes. All right. So we're a little bit late on this because we've been waiting for a staffing survey that the city has undertaken with Carlson Detman is the consulting firm. I do not have that actual document yet. It has not been shared, but it is having an enormous impact on our budget for next year. I'm going to go over the form here that's in the packet. This is what we're looking at, just because we've got quite a few people that haven't seen this before. And this is not the same format that our finance report is in. This is the format that the city uses for budgeting. So this is how we get through the budget, and then we take all of our numbers and put it into our finance report. But if you start across the top with the columns, we've got a 5-year average. This document actually does show each of those 5 years, but that's a bit much to put on here. So we just put the average. And then you've got the 2022 adopted budget. That's one of the more important columns here. The 6/22 year-to-date actual, it's just what we spent by like early June. I don't know that that's all that helpful. The 2022 estimate is also, I mean, it's kind of a guess as to where we're going to end up. And then the 2023 requested budget. So this is what we're really looking at. This is what we're totaling up for what our request will be to the city. And then you have a budget change, so you can see if we are adding or subtracting money in any certain account. So I'll go over a few things here. The property tax levy did go up. The Department of Revenue is predicting our net new construction will be 4.16%, which is good, and we calculated that in. Overall, we are sitting on a shortage of about $33,000 right now. One thing that I want to mention here, so some of you will remember from last year, we had estimated what the net new construction was going to be at 4.5%. And then it actually came in at 5%, but the city did not increase it for us. We had already balanced our budget. We were far along in the process. We agreed to that because we were balanced. It was fine. And I remember saying to them last year, I just don't want this to become regular. Like we're not gonna do this again. And I have talked to Misty, the finance director, about actually recouping that. So I did, when I saw that we were not balancing, I went back and did the calculation for what that 0.5% would have been for 2022, and then what the 4.16% increase on that would be. And it's around $10,000. So it's not going to solve all of our budget problems, but it looks like we're probably going to add that $10,000 to the levy. Good news. Happy to hear that. You'll see that $83,000 that we just talked about from Dane County is in there. And then we've got a bunch of smaller amounts. One thing I want to point out is that we are taking library fines down to 0. So as you know, we don't charge fines here. We haven't since 2018, but there were some other libraries in the system that still were, and we always collect for each other. So we were taking in some money. That has gone down to almost nothing because I think almost every library in the county has stopped collecting fines. So we're finally taking that down to 0. It's the right thing to do. I'm happy to see that happen. The other decrease I want to talk about here is in miscellaneous revenue. We're losing the $7,000 there, and that's a reduction in adjacent county payments. So every year we request reimbursement from the counties around us for providing service to their patrons or their residents. So they're in South Central, some of them, not all of them, and we do a calculation based on our annual budget and our circulation. We get a per cost checkout fee. And then they pay 70% of that. We have just had a couple of, I think, people that have moved or changed their library habits. And so they're not checking out here where they were. So we've got some counties that have gone down. When I say drastically, it'll be from like 500 to like 100. So it was never very high to start with, but the per item cost was pretty high. So that's gone down. I think this is just borrowing habits that are changing because of the pandemic. I don't think there's a thing to be done about it. I am happy that this has never been a huge number for us. So we're not feeling a bigger pinch than we are from it. But that's what that is. Then under assigned fund balance applied, every year we have been taking $10,000 out of our fund balance and applying it to a strategic planning project. So what that means is our bottom line in this budget will always be $10,000 in the red because this doesn't count. This doesn't calculate into it. So it's okay if we're $10,000 in the red. We're currently $43,000 in the red, and that's not okay. And we'll talk about that some more, but it will not fully balance because of that line. All right, so going into the salaries and wages area. So this is where we're getting hit really hard. So the staffing salaries survey that they've done has come back with, I think, some pretty significant increases, especially in the lower paid pay ranges for the city, which I think is really needed. So if you remember, we've taken our shelving position that used to make $9.25 an hour. We put that up to $13 this year so that we could hire. We were having a really hard time getting people, and we've increased it to $15 for January, which is, I think, where we should be with it. But then you have to look at the next position up is a library assistant 1, and they are currently starting at like $16.32, which is probably not big enough gap between the two positions. So I think there's a lot of bumping up that's going to happen, which is great. I fully support that. I think it's what we need to do. You know, our staff are our biggest resource. I don't want to squabble about increasing salaries, but it comes at a huge cost that I don't know, like we're having a hard time absorbing. So you'll see the budget change for the salaries and wages section here is at $133,000 increase. To put that in perspective for those of you that are new, in the last 2 years, so last year we took 2 part-time custodial positions and merged them into 1 full-time, and we had to have benefits for that. So the benefits were about $30,000, and then we had increases just in step increases, cost of living increases, and we had about a $55,000 increase. The year before that, when we just held steady, we didn't change any positions. We just had cost of living and step and merit increases. We added $15,000 to this. So those are kind of the last 2 years, and now we're jumping to $133,000, which is a lot to absorb. So that's kind of what is causing some of the problems here. Also want to note the health insurance number here is not final. They are not expecting that to come in until mid-September. Misty is expecting about a 7% increase. We are showing a 0.5% decrease. I followed up with her because that seemed really off to me, and she said it is probably due to somebody changing coverage from family to single or family to none, but that she would double check and make sure that was correct. Then as we start going down through the rest of this, you're going to see everything that's in parentheses because I'm cutting everything I can possibly think to cut in order to be able to afford the salaries. So you'll see in that 240 account, like I've cut that $17,000. That was the LED project. And that was actually a really easy place to cut. I think we're probably going to have to take another $10,000 out of that account for repairs done by others. Just because I'm getting pretty low down about where I can take money from. So that'll probably be a big one. The contracts, we have very little control over that, right? So these are contracts multi-year contracts we have with people that have escalators built in. Inflation is up for everybody. Like nobody's going to come back and say like, oh, why don't you pay us less next year for service on your elevators? So we've got very little wiggle room there. Contract and performers, I've taken that down a little bit. I'm guessing that will have to come down further. I think our programming services may take a hit with this. So going down, I'm kind of taking a little bit from everywhere I can. We've got supplies. We've got training and travel. I'm taking that down quite a bit. Operating materials and supplies. My real hope here is that we can spend every dime we have this year in preparing for next year, and buying supplies that we're going to need for programming and just for the library. So hopefully that won't hurt too much. The big change under 350 is kind of a misnomer. They have added an additional account for us for copier leases. So that is simply moved to the back page. So it looks like we're saving $25,000 there, but we're not. If you flip over to the other side, then yes, does somebody have a question? Okay.
I do, if it's a good time to ask it.
Sure.
On the income side, there's interest income.
Mm-hmm.
The 5-year average is almost $15,000, and then there's an endowment investment earnings,
Yes.
$8,300. Is that a place where you could maybe make a more liberal estimate?
I made a more liberal estimate last year, and Misty in finance came back and said that's unrealistic. We should take that down. So I've tried that, and I will try it again. But I think she's looking at I think we had some really good years, and then things got worse. So we can absolutely look at that with the finance director, but I don't know that it's going to net very much of it. And the endowment investment is a good point. So that is actually not money that we have access to. That's in the endowment. So it is considered an asset, but we can't use it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you look on the back, here are some other things that are going up. So you'll see the lease rental costs. That's for the copier leases. That simply moved from one account to the next. The next three are things that we pay to the city. So we pay for IT services. We get our email from them. We get our file sharing from them. We have security cameras, all of our door access, phone systems, a lot of stuff from them. So we pay them for that. That is going up a little bit there. Insurance didn't go up as much as I expected. So that was good news. And the IT capital went down. So great. I'm not going to argue with that. And then you'll see the last one there is the administrative fee that we pay to the city for HR, finance, services. Maggie starts all of our bill paying, but they do all the actual transactions for us. They have all the bank accounts. They do all of the maintenance of funds over there. And then HR. And I think we probably have more turnover than any other department in the city. So we pay pretty heavily for HR. So that went up 6%. I was expecting it to be a little bit more. So I guess I'm happy about that. The transfer to capital projects. So eventually what will show up in there, and then there was also a line on that for revenue, is where we have the $10,000 right now. We will be adding in the money for the sorter there. So $212,000 to $220,000 will be added in both of those places. But because it's fund balance, it's not really affecting the rest of the budget.
So will the sorter perhaps, I'm totally in favor of funding raises for existing staff, but will it perhaps, like if there's a vacancy or something like that, will it result in the need for less staff at all?
I don't think so. I think we would have to pretty drastically cut staff in the circulation department to offset, which we can't do. We really built the staff size based on having a sorter because we opened with it. So we're not like some libraries where they had more staff than they needed once they got a sorter.
And it's really just replacing the same function as the one that we have now that's reaching end of life. It's not
right
like a high enough additional.
Right.
Okay.
No, there's only so much it can do. If it could shelve books, we'd be in a different situation. So this is where we sit right now. It's pretty early. Usually we're further along by now. But with the salary study, we're just not. What I can tell you is that I know the mayor and city administrator had a lot of discussions about the salary study and decided that they really wanted to value the staff that we have. And be cognizant of what's happening in the world with inflation, and cost of living. And, so they would like to fully fund the staffing plan is what they're aiming for. I know they've got, like $600,000 they need to cut from the city budget, the general fund. So I guess I'm thankful that we're not a part of that we're getting to make these choices on our own. But it's not going to be a fun budget year. This is the worst that I've seen in a number of years. But we are still working on it, and we will get there one way or the other. So you will see this again next month, hopefully in a much more complete way. Does anybody have questions?
I did have one question on the
Mhm.
repair and maintenance.
Yes.
What's involved in that? Because it's
Um,
going down a bit.
Yeah, so there are a couple things that go into that. First is HVAC maintenance is there. That's about $6,000. That's $6,000. And then we have pest control, which is going up. We're switching vendors, so that's going to be $1,000. And then we typically have $13,000 in there for what we call unexpected repairs. So the front door breaks and we have to fix it. We take it out of there. What the city likes to call it is work done by others. We're able over the last couple of years to put more money in there in order to do the LED project. But now that that is done, that's why it's going down, but it's going to go down by a lot further than I want it to. It took us years to get that $13,000 of unexpected repairs. And it was a lot of years of having things happen that we didn't know how to pay for. So I've been real happy to have that, and I'm going to be real sad to see it go. So we will, whatever we have to cut this year, we're going to be trying to put in like next year and the following years. I don't feel like we're except for that LED money, which frankly we could put towards another building project very easily. But I don't feel like there's anywhere in here where we've been over budgeted. We've saved money because of the pandemic. We've saved money because of vacancies, which is why we've got the fund balance. I'll tell you right now, my real frustration is that we have a really healthy fund balance and we are not allowed to use it for operating funds, which I find really frustrating. Like we've been really good about saving money, and I feel like this is an emergency to use it for, and the city does not agree. I don't think accounting rules agree either, so I get that, but on that same hand, I think we'll be spending everything we can this year. Like I don't see a big reason. Fund balance is going to buy us a new sorter. That's fantastic. Like that's why we do it. But I wish we could help ourselves out here with that, but that's I don't think going to happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Wendy, we're going to be running in a deficit situation probably in 2023. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say that yet.
Okay,
I think we've got more work to do here to see how close we can get.
okay.
We have never run at a deficit. And it occurred to me the other day as I was looking at this, I don't even know, like, I don't know if the rest of the city does that. Like, is that even a possibility? I don't know. Misty would not like that in the finance department. I know that. I think my goal is to try to balance by the end of the year. I feel like that's a responsible thing to do. It may be painful. And there's some things in here that we can't really cut. So, what we spend on collections, the Dane County standards require that. So I can take maybe $5,000 out of that, but then if we take more, then we're risking not meeting that standard. So I don't know. There's only so much wiggle room we've got.
Wendy, will we be getting any money when we acquire the city, the town of Madison in October?
So yes, so we'll get more tax base, and they have increased the levy limits because of that. It has gotten real complicated. So this has been in the works for 20 years. And in the last, I think 2 or 3 years, the town of Madison has been spending their assets. Like they had fund balance and they've been lowering people's taxes artificially, just as like a little going away present. And so like those are going to have to go back up, and then they're going to be higher because it's Fitchburg. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of like extra. I think we were expecting that we would get all of their assets and it would be great. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm not real hopeful that will help us any more than what we've already got.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on cutting expenses, is there anything else that could be done on the revenue side? Like I see there's an empty line for room rentals. There's certainly a lot of a lot more people working from home, or I don't know if, like, if there's more room for meeting space or something where,
I don't know that we could, so we started charging room rentals for people that didn't live in Fitchburg, and it was a full-time job to try to track down people that were using other people's addresses to rent the rooms. So we didn't have the staff time to handle it. And we couldn't take credit card payments. There were a lot of parts to that are more complicated than you would expect. And I will tell you, room rentals are way down right now. We're seeing very few. So I don't know. When I look at the other lines, I don't see anything that we could increase. I mean, you could artificially increase some things, but I don't think that would help us in the end. Like we could hope for more donations, but I don't think it's realistic.
yeah, grants is another possible one. Are there any good library grants we could apply for?
We could
that
apply,
could
but
spend on
we
staffing?
wouldn't
I don't
know.
We'd probably have to spend it on whatever the grant was for, right?
Right. And I don't think we would know in time to add it here. So yeah, we do. No.
Just spitballing. Sorry for
Yeah.
talking.
Oh
out
yeah.
loud.
No, absolutely. I've been doing the same thing for like 2 weeks now. Like where is the room? So yeah. So I don't feel as terrible about this as I did a few days ago. But I just want everybody to know that whatever we're cutting this year, like we're gonna be pushing hard to replace it in the next couple of years. With the programming money that we're taking down, like I'm already thinking like maybe the Halloween hunt can't come back this year or next year. Maybe we just have to hold off on that. We'll see. All right. Any other questions? All right, then we should vote to approve this in draft form, knowing it's not a finished document.
We need a motion to approve the draft form of the 2023 budget. Okay, I will vote to approve it. I'll make a motion.
I'll
I need a s-
second Toby.
Thank you, Anne. Any other clarifications needed?
Just have one other suggestion. The Halloween hunt, I wonder if like Hy-Vee would sponsor it, or like you could get a sponsorship from or Promega, or some local business. You could reach out and do a sponsorship. Is that something that
We could think about that. I hesitate to do that because then I think you have to do that every year, and I hate to count on other entities for our programs, but we could think about it. Yeah.
Omega also does their own Halloween hunt in their building.
Do they?
They do. I did not
I've never
know
been
that,
invited.
but someone did tell me that. At least they did. It was either last year or the year before. But
Okay. Good to know.
there's got to be someone out there that wants to do it? Better than canceling it, I would think.
okay, if there's no other discussion, Renee, you good?
I'll shut up.
No,
Yep.
that's okay. No,
No, don't
please
shut up.
do not shut up.
No.
I don't want to call for the vote if you want further discussion.
Nope, we're good.
Okay, then all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And we will go to the president's report, and I have nothing to report. Just thank you all for attending today and coming on time. We appreciate it. Library Director Report, number 8 on the agenda.
All right. So Phil is here to help me with a discussion that we're going to have. This is talk about the current operating hours of the library. I put this under Library Director Report because it is an operational decision, so it does not require board approval. But I, of course, would not be making a change like this without running it by everybody. Just to kind of give you where this came from. As you all know, Tanya Bolchin was one of our long-term circulation employees who recently took a job at Middleton. And then just talking with Tanya about what made that job more attractive than working at Fitchburg, she mentioned a couple of things. And one of them was that they close at 8 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock at night. And I was really surprised by that because Middleton is the same size that we are. And it's been fairly typical through history that 9 o'clock is kind of when libraries close. And so we kind of started taking a look around, and it turns out that I think post-pandemic, most libraries did not go back to 9 p.m. And so I ran that by Phil and he seemed real interested in it, and a couple of other staff did as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Phil. He's going to screen share because he's done some data gathering to look at how busy we are then. I'll let you go ahead and do that, Phil.
Sure, yeah. Is that showing up for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't done this very much before. So yeah, we like Wendy was saying, we started looking into the 8 to 9 p.m. hour. One of the things that we've kind of always seen and sort of known from being on desk is just that the 8 to 9 hour has always been pretty slow historically. We don't get very much foot traffic. We don't get very much circulation. And like Wendy mentioned, the feedback that we got from Tanya in her exit interview was that the 9 p.m. closure was a reason to take a new position in a new library. One of the things that we end up doing with our schedules here is that we end up on days that we close at 9 o'clock, a good amount of the staff, we end up having to come back and then open at 8 o'clock the next day. And with talking this through with Wendy and looking at some of the data, we thought this might be an interesting and like a low impact way to kind of increase the quality of life for library staff as we're looking at things here. All of that in mind, we wanted to make sure we're kind of approaching this objectively. We wanted to make sure we're really looking at the data and coming to it from an objective standpoint. So the ways we kind of identified to do that was to compare our hours to other libraries in Dade County, to see, like Wendy had said, what libraries had not returned to the 9 p.m. hour after the COVID closures and reopenings, and maybe which ones hadn't been doing it before in the first place. Take a look at some of our own measurable data, the circulation statistics that we have for showing how busy we are at different times of day and days of the week and so forth, that we can take a look at that way. And then see if it's something that library staff would support, see if it's something that would be helpful because it would require a change in their hours that they would be working. So we wanted to kind of look at all of that.
I just want to point out, not a reduction in hours, it just shifts their hours earlier.
Exactly. So, but making sure people would support people who had been doing a 5 to 9 shift, doing a 4 to 8 or something along those lines, of being able to accommodate that. The first step that we went through, actually, Maggie went through and gathered up a bunch of information here of looking at all the different libraries in Dane County and the hours that they have and that they run. This is a bit too much to digest. So kind of like the big stuff that we looked at was it's only 25% of libraries in Dane County are open till 9 p.m. Even the Madison branches, which, you know, I would have presumed would be more likely to be open until 9 o'clock. It's only 3 out of 9 that are open at that late. And that even with a closure of closing at 8 o'clock, we would still be offering 64 hours a week of service to our patrons here, with the Dade County average being 57 hours. So it would still be pretty well above that. The circulation data that we pulled, we actually pull these reports every year to kind of see. We usually use them when we're scheduling to see if we have like desk coverage at the right times, to make sure that during our busiest times of day that we have enough overlap between staff members to accommodate those busier hours. And like I said, for a long time, we've kind of known that the 8 to 9 hours is slow, but I was surprised by how much slower it actually is. So this little chart that we have down here shows for the last 5 measurable years, because in 2020, kind of like Wendy had said before, all of our statistics kind of got thrown into into chaos when we were closed and when we were in the reopening process. But we basically went through 2016 and then pulled the data from September 2021, which is when we went to being open till 9 o'clock again and went back to our normal hours, being open 7 days a week. And what we found was that it is consistently the slowest that we have in the building. It's, you know, in 2016, it starts at 3.5% and has actually been on a pretty steady decline, actually, even since 2014, going down that way. So our data shows that it's the slowest hour of the week and the slowest amount of like foot traffic business that we have in the building, kind of by far. And also shows that it's decreasing. So it's something to kind of take a look in here with a pretty sharp decrease between pre-COVID and post-COVID. And then the last thing that we were talking about here was just making sure that there was support from library staff to make a change like this. And I mean, not probably super surprisingly, but it was an overwhelming amount of support from library staff and ease for accommodations, so that it would work with people's schedules going that way. Perspective change like this too actually would strengthen our schedules during some of those busier times that we have as well. Typically in the library, the busy times we have are the morning around story times, so like 11 to 12, 11 to 1, and then the evening commute when people are driving home. So 4 to 6 usually tends to be our busiest time of the day that we have here. So kind of a little extra advantage that would come from this if this was something we did with that, we would actually have more overlap during our busiest times of the day. So
and I ran this by a couple of people, Toby and Ann, just to see kind of what their thoughts were on it earlier. And I guess my thinking is, like, I think post-COVID, like, people are really looking for a whole lot of flexibility in their work life. So they want to work from home, they want flexible hours. And most of that we just can't do, right? Like you can't have a library job and work from home. Like, you have to be here. And we're not going to close at 5 o'clock, and we're not going to not be open on the weekends. And this seems like the one thing that we could offer, going home at 8 versus 9 may not feel like that big of a deal if you haven't had to do it, if you haven't worked in retail or something that is open till 9, but 9 o'clock feels really late. And then to come in the next morning is pretty brutal. I did that for the first probably 10 years of my library career, and it wasn't great. The other thing that I want to mention is that with this change, we could also make another change. So we differ from City Hall staff in how we do lunch and breaks. So we have always at the library had a 1 hour unpaid lunch and then 2 15-minute paid breaks for a full-time person. But what they do at the city, and this was, I think, just recently clarified. So they have a 1 hour lunch that is half paid and half unpaid, and they don't do the 15-minute breaks. So I think that we could incorporate that. And then not only are we closing earlier, but full-time staff would probably be working 8 to 4:30 or 11:30 to 8, which I think is also a big increase in quality of life. I was really nervous that people wouldn't want to come in at 11:30 or 11 if we made this change, and literally nobody minded. So that had been one of my hangups about doing this, but that proved to not be a thing. The 4 hour staff would still get a 15-minute paid break. So we always joke with the full-time folks about, like, have you taken a 15-minute break in the last 3 years? Because people just tend not to. So I think that we don't lose anything there. So what does everybody think about this?
Do people really want an hour lunch? Would they rather go home earlier and not have such a long lunch?
Part of the hour lunch, and I think this is pretty typical across libraries, is just that we schedule our desks by the hour. So to switch that to a half hour schedule is double the scheduling work. So I think the hour still works. I've always felt like if you don't have food here, you can't really run out and get half an hour, and people seem happy with it. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
You looked at the circulation data for that last hour of the day. Is there anything else besides just the circulation numbers that would be good to look at that's happening at that last hour of the day?
The other thing,
computers or something, or
the other thing that we looked at, so we have Wi-Fi now outside the building. So I think that if people need Wi-Fi, they could use it there. Our computer use is not heavy then. The other thing that I wanted to make sure to look at was meeting room use. Do we have a lot of meeting room groups that want to stay until 9? And I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that are going to notice the difference. Some groups reserve till 9, but end up leaving between 7 and 8. I think there's specifically 2 groups that are going to be a little bit put out by this. One of them has had to be reminded that they can't drink at the library multiple times, so I don't feel that bad about it. So yeah, I don't think it'll be a huge change for that either.
Who are they?
Well, I don't want to say now that I said they were drinking at the library.
Oh, well.
And we'll talk. I mean, we can reach out to them too.
Who's the other group that's going to be impacted? I don't know if they're providing, some sort of public good or something, and that they need to be there till 9. I guess I would consider that.
No, and if they needed a room until then, I think they could get a room over at the community center, because they don't staff that. I don't think that they have the limits that we do. It's the beekeepers.
I think, Wendy, because we pay on the lower end, you can go to Hy-Vee, you can go to Woodman's, you can go to Target and get paid, quite frankly, a lot more than a shelver does.
Yes.
So giving them this perk of leaving at 8 o'clock, it impacts very, very little patrons, very few patrons, that we should absolutely go ahead with this. And I think if you ran the data on numbers of people coming in January and February, when it's minus 10 degrees out
Yeah.
between 8 and 9 o'clock, you're going to find that the only people in the library are our staff.
Yes. Yes.
So
I've heard that from the staff that they often feel like there's quite a few more of them than patrons in that hour.
So I'm fully in favor of this reduction.
Thank you. And my thinking is that we could implement this when we change our summer hours over to fall hours. So the week after Labor Day, we'll go back to being open on Sundays. And I think that would be the perfect time to make the change.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate
Yeah.
all the data crunching.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
All
Uh,
right.
what-
I have
Yes.
2 more things under director's report.
Okay.
We were very lucky. We received a box of 90 COVID tests from Public Health Madison and Dane County to hand out to the public. So we've done this once before when Promega gave us tests to hand out. So we put about a third of them into the outreach librarian's hands. She's going to take them to the Fun in the Park event that they're having next week at Southdale. And the rest of them we're putting on a table in the lobby, and we're asking people to take either 1 per person or 4 per household. And Dane County says when those run out, we can request more. So that's fantastic. Very happy about that. The last thing is we are working with the police department to provide a women's self-defense class. This is something that I had asked them about for a staff in-service that happened in May. So that it didn't work out in time for that. But they have an officer that's very interested in this and has several of their officers that do the actual training. So we're working with them. I think we're going to do it later in September. So 6 to 10 people they can train at a time. So if it's popular, we'll probably do it again and open it up to the rest of the city staff as well. So looking forward to that. And that is everything for the library director report.
Sorry, is it just staff or is that for people to go to as well?
Staff. Although if it's good, I'll recommend it to go public because I think people would love it.
Wendy, going back to a quick budget question, how does
Yes.
this affect the security cameras that we've talked about in the past? Do you
If
still
we
have that
can-
in the back of your mind to get those?
Yes,
Okay.
the hiccup with that, so we would need to spend that money this year. We do have that money that we could use. The IT director for the city resigned and is taking a different job, so he was the one that was going to help me with that. His replacement is very busy, so I emailed him this week to say, like, if you just want to put me in touch with the vendors, like, we can do this. And he set up a meeting for us on Monday. So
Wow,
that is moving
perfect.
forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
So if there's nothing else in the library director report, we will move on to agenda number 9, the committee reports, strategic planning,
Nothing for strategic planning.
facilities.
Facilities, I have a little bit of bad news in that a window in the quiet reading room has shattered, spider webbed, so it is still intact, but it is not in good shape. It's a double paned window and it's the outside of the pane that cracked. We can't see any kind of hole or divot or anything that caused it. So, and nobody heard it happen. Staff noticed it when they were closing a couple of weeks ago. Real hard to find someone to replace a window that's 10 feet tall on the second floor of a building. So Kevin and I are working on that. It seems stable, so fingers crossed it stays that way. Apparently the windows are tinted. I didn't know that. There's a company that does like the envelope of the building. So they do the whole outside of the building. And so the second glass person I had come out and look at it was able to tell me who manufactured it and that it is tinted and that we need to get in touch with them. So I'm doing that tomorrow. Hopefully, I think this is going to be real expensive. I think they're going to need a cherry picker to put it in from the outside if that's how they have to do it. I am hoping to use money from the CIP building improvement through Public Works.
Wendy, how come we have to pay for that? Because if you turn the library upside down and shake it.
So that CIP is funded by Public Works.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're
What about
thinking
building
the same way.
What Why isn't there building insurance that covers it?
Oh, you know what? I'll check with finance and see if it would. I didn't even think about that. I will ask. I don't know what the precipitating event is and if we'll need one, but I will check. Thank you.
Windstorm, clearly.
All right, that's all I have for facilities.
Personnel?
We have an LA2 in adult services position that's open. We just did interviews Monday, Tuesday, so we should be hiring that soon. And then we currently have an LA1 10-hour position open because that person moved into a 20-hour position. So, and we are, as always, hiring shelvers. We've got, I think, two in process right now. So things are moving along very well.
Okay. Any clarifications or questions for Wendy on strategic planning, facilities, or personnel? Then we will move on to announcements. The next library board meeting is Wednesday, September 21st via Zoom at 5:30. And I need a motion to adjourn. Someone?
I so move.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Opposed? Then we are adjourned at 6:15 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.